Call the meeting to order. Please take the roll.
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Schron.
Here.
Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly is absent. Ms. Simon. Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Mr. Byrne.
Here.
You have a quorum, and let the record reflect that Councilmember Miller is also in attendance.
And thank you for being here, Mr. Miller. Thank you. Is there anybody signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
Thank you. And the minutes of the November 18th meeting, has everybody a chance to look at those?
Yes.
And is there a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any opposed? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes have been approved. There's one item to be read into the record. If it could please read that in the record.
Resolution 2024-0449, authorizing an amendment to a contract with the Cleveland Foundation for the Opioid Innovation Project Fund of the Cleveland Foundation for additional funds in the amount of $5 million for a total amount not to exceed $10 million.
And just to give some background on this, what we did is we as a body had brought forth this original piece of legislation for the amount of $10 million. In the process of hearing the background on this, we also heard some concerns about could the committee of the Opioid Innovation Fund get stood up, what could be put together, how fast could we get people of high credentials that would want to sign up to be part of this? Could we get some young fledgling organization like the Cleveland Foundation to actually be our financial mentor and funder and source out there? We also looked at whether or not the idea of concepts and projects could come forward. We looked at whether we could have one of our solid rock stars in the county, like Brandy Carney, be part of this and be part of this process going forward. We looked at a lot of things that were held as accountable standards to see whether or not it was worthy to continue to grow this into the next level. As a matter of fact, I happened to have met with some folks in private equity today, and they said the key to private equity growth is to actually go from one round of funding to go to the next round of funding, and then from there it continues to grow. I think what you're going to hear today from the folks from the Cleveland Foundation is Jason Weiner is going to be opening up and opening up some dialogue and talking. He's also going to talk about some of the other parts that we have learned which are some of the sadder parts of families that have gone through the opiate issues out there. We do know that one of the things that we were all concerned about is that the end of the opiate fund that came over from Judge Polster's court, that we'd come back and look at it in 3 or 4 years, and if we didn't do something of the nature that we're talking about here, we would come back and look at it and say, we did a lot of great things in treating, but we did nothing to actually move the needle. So here we are at this stage, and we're ready to have the discussion about showing you, this committee, what we've done, where it's gone, and where it's going to go in the future. And I think that we got some exciting things that are going to be releasing in the future too. So with that, Jason, if are you the first one at the podium, or who's going to be the first? The three. Wow, we get a trio. Okay, sorry about that. I didn't. If you come up and please state your name, put it on the record so that the microphone cannot tell who it is that's talking unless you put your name on the record.
Good afternoon. My name's Jason Weiner, philanthropic advisor with the Cleveland Foundation.
If you need to move the microphone, feel free to move that.
Hi, Ginger Malakar, General Counsel and SVP of Philanthropic Strategy at the Cleveland Foundation.
Good afternoon, Kate Terrell. I'm a program officer with the Cleveland Foundation's grant making and community impact team.
Well, with that, who you are and what you do, and the slides should be popping up on screens right there as we speak. And who is the clicker? There you go. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're here today to spend a little bit of time briefing you on the last year of activities for the Opioid Innovation Fund. Our goal today is to give you a comprehensive overview of the fund, including its early development, the recruitment of its advisory committee, and the planning work that has taken place over the past year, and our path forward as we think about entering into 2025. The Opioid Innovation Fund was seeded in December of 2022 in partnership with outgoing County Executive Armand Budish. In 2023, now County Executive Chris Ronayne affirmed that this fund remained a priority and approved the formal transfer of funds as well as initial appointments to the fund's advisory committee. Through a partnership with the Cleveland Foundation, the county was able to earmark a subset of its opioid settlement dollars and invest those dollars via a donor-advised fund. The donor-advised fund mechanism enables the county to earn a return on its investment while maintaining control over how the dollars are ultimately returned to our community in service of impact. In addition to managing the investment of the fund's financial resources, the foundation serves as an administrative partner, supporting the county in recruiting and convening the fund's advisory committee and refining the fund's giving priorities and strategies. While the foundation is an engaged partner, it's important to remember that by virtue of the donor-advised fund's structure, the county remains in control over the fund's spending, retaining final say over any and all disbursements. This fund emerged from the recognition that innovation is a powerful and essential complement to treatment and prevention. Innovation equips providers with new tools, resources, and processes that have the potential to transform patient outcomes, changing the trajectory of the opioid crisis in our region. Northeast Ohio is already a hub of medical innovation, with multiple major hospital systems and community-based providers partnering locally, nationally, and internationally to develop new solutions for emerging and entrenched healthcare concerns. Our regional healthcare assets are bolstered by our manufacturing and education sectors. Northeast Ohio has all the necessary pieces to take innovation from a good idea to a vetted prototype to a final product. By investing in innovative ideas with market potential, the fund has the opportunity to pursue a double bottom line, achieving both a social and financial return. Our fund's work began with scoping a definition of innovation. Innovation is one of more than a dozen different abatement strategies approved for funding under existing opioid settlements. Other approved abatement strategies include treatment, early intervention, overdose prevention, and more. Our committee has come together around the idea that to be truly innovative is to be both new and useful. Novelty without value, without impact, without effect here in our community is not innovation. Innovation is also more than just products. Innovation is inclusive of new programs and services, updated and efficient processes, creative business models, and more. Relative to other approved abatement strategies, innovation has seen less investment. Of the more than $14.7 million granted out by our statewide One Ohio Recovery Foundation, just over $200,000 was designated for innovation. Significant investments in recovery supports, treatment, and prevention could be powerfully complemented by investments in innovation. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jason, having heard a little bit about the why and the how of this work, to talk about who's around the table and the expertise that they're bringing to the advisory committee.
Thank you, Kate. So our team that has been working on this since the inception of the fund, you can see in the deck that it consists of staff from the Cleveland Foundation as well as advisory committee members who are appointed either by the county executive, by the president of Cuyahoga County Council, or through a combination of advisors from the Cleveland Foundation and our representation from Cuyahoga County on there. So you can see in this slide that Ginger, Kate, and I represent the foundation. Representing the county, we have Brandy Carney, Paul Herdig, and Councilman Jack Sharon. And from the community, we also have Aaron Marks, Joe Rich, Neil Wyant, Daniel Lettenberger Klein, Jonathan Lee, and Dr. Elena Yanchar. And I want to just take a few minutes to talk a little bit more about these individuals and the expertise that they bring to the committee. Now, certainly, you're familiar with your county colleagues here. Brandy Carney, who's our Director of Public Safety and Justice for the county, overseeing the county's most significant investments of its opioid settlement distribution dollars. And Brandy is one of 4 Cuyahoga County representatives serving on the One Ohio Recovery Foundation's Region 3 Board of Directors, along with County Executive Chris Ronayne, Director of Cuyahoga County Department of Health and Human Services David Merriman, and President of County Council District 8 Councilperson Pernell Jones Jr. And Brandy serves in that wonderful role from understanding what's happening at a state level, regional level, and local level in terms of this work. Paul Herdig, your colleague, who's the director of the Cuyahoga County Department of Development with the county, and then Councilman Schron, County Council District 6, President and CEO of Juergens, and has been a passionate and powerful voice in the battle against opioid use disorder. So these are our county representatives. Our governing document requires individuals with some expertise in evaluating and funding commercialization of innovations, with at least 2 of these 3 individuals having specific expertise in healthcare and medical innovations. So these 3 individuals represent that group of people. Aaron Marks, who's the VP and General Manager of Blockchain and Digital Assets at Century Enterprises, which is a manufacturer of converged biometric identification solutions. Also, Aaron is the co-founder of Futureland, which is an annual conference in Cleveland for entrepreneurs and startups with a mission to transform Cleveland's innovation and eco-tech system. Joe Rich, actually, I want to just point a couple things, additional things about Aaron out. He also serves as the president of the board at Stella Maris, and is the chair of the Prevention and Education Subcommittee for the Heroin and Opioid Task Force, which is led by the U.S. Attorney General's Attorney's Office, Northern District of Ohio. Joe Rich, in the middle on the slide there, is the managing partner of innovations and ventures at the Cleveland Clinic and a member of the Cleveland Innovation District team. He has served as a executive and manager for the State of Ohio Third Frontier sponsored Ohio Biovalidation Fund. He has expertise in medical devices, life sciences, venture capital investments, and angel financing, as well as joint ventures and other strategic alliances involving technology commercialization. And Neil Wyant rounds out our representation from this particular category of committee members, who is currently the Vice President of Investment and Commercialization at UH Ventures. Neil is an experienced early stage investor, manager, and board member with more than 25 years of experience with new venture formation and governance, business development, and commercialization. And prior to joining UH Ventures, he had established and managed a venture investing business for a family office and has held several C-level positions in early stage ventures. And early in his career, Neil managed the technology transfer office at Argonne National Laboratory for the University of Chicago. And the last group of committee members are individuals who have community healthcare experience, which should include one individual with experience as a patient who has received or is receiving addiction treatment. So in this group, we have Jonathan Lee, who's the founder and president and chief executive officer of Signature Health, a position that he's held for over 30 years. Jonathan struggled with substance abuse as a teen, but thankfully found recovery at the age of 17. In 1993, he opened up North Coast Center, which focused on treating adolescents for substance use disorder, and later became Signature Health, which he has since then grown into a full-service healthcare agency that offers mental health, addiction recovery, primary care, infectious disease, pharmacy, and lab services to patients throughout Northeast Ohio. Dr. Elena Yanchar is the chief of psychiatry and the medical director of specialized behavioral health services at the centers. She's a dual-boarded psychiatrist and family medicine physician with a long history of working with underserved populations, primarily in community health centers, homeless shelters, and community outreach settings, with extensive experience providing medication-assisted treatment for individuals with substance abuse disorders. And last but certainly not least, Daniel Lettenberger Klein is the CEO at Stella Maris, which has been providing transformational chemical dependency and mental health treatment services to anyone regardless of their race, religion, gender, or ability to pay since 1948. Previously, Daniel served as a regional executive director for Georgia operations at Rivermen Health, where he managed 4 facilities across the state of Georgia. He developed and launched the Atlanta Addiction Recovery Center for Rivermen Health while serving as the executive director for Georgia Detox and Recovery. So another career committed to serving individuals struggling with substance abuse. And then the Cleveland Foundation leadership, you've met us all, but Ginger serves as our general counsel and the senior vice president for philanthropic strategy at the foundation. Kate is our sort of content expert in this space, working as a program officer, and myself working as a philanthropic advisor. My primary relationships is key relationship management for many important projects and partnerships that the Cleveland Foundation has. So just a little bit about our process. 2024 has involved an intense focus on building a strong operating foundation for the fund. We've really focused on taking the time to bring the right people to the table, to develop a strong baseline of shared knowledge, and to commit to a unified vision around our processes and priorities, which is essential to ensuring that what we are able to move as a group to identify and pursue at the highest quality investment and grant-making opportunities. So, with this in mind, we met monthly through 2024 with a focus on fully seating our advisory committee, engaging on ongoing learning opportunities, and beginning conversations with possible implementing partners. That's really been the focus. And so this just laid out for you in terms of a quarterly summary of activity that we've, at a high level, have focused on. So we began 2024 with 7 advisory committee members and 2 vacancies. One committee member who we had proactively recused their seat prior to relocating outside of Cuyahoga County, which led to a 3rd vacancy. We vetted more than a dozen candidates to fill the remaining 3 seats. And following conversation with our partners in Cuyahoga County leadership and approval from the Cleveland Foundation's senior staff and board of directors, the advisory committee was fully seated by June of 2024 with the individuals who I shared with you earlier. So while each advisory committee member brings deep expertise in specific subject areas, we also wanted to ensure that a general baseline of knowledge existed across the whole of the committee in order for the committee to operate at its highest potential. So committee members really must be both conversant in multiple issue areas and comfortable with engaging in good faith debate. We supported the growth and development of the committee by engaging in a 6-month learning journey that we will discuss in greater detail in just a couple of minutes. Following the completion of our learning journey, the committee dove into discussing potential business models for the fund. So this discussion includes identifying and vetting potential intermediary partners, as well as discussing potential funding strategies, including social impact investing and the traditional grant making that the Cleveland Foundation certainly is known for. The fund is currently in discussion with Jumpstart regarding an intermediary partnership. So to date, we've held 2 meetings with Jumpstart. Foundation staff had an initial conversation to really better understand the scope of services Jumpstart is able to provide before scheduling a follow-up conversation that included representation from the fund's advisory committee. And in fact, tomorrow, Jumpstart will be presenting possible partnership models to the advisory committee at our December meeting. So while the fund's advisory committee has taken time to focus on planning and development, the fund itself has been generating a return via investment in our money market fund. And as of October 31st, 2024, the county's initial investment of $5 million has grown by 9%, generating an additional $450,000. So I'm going to pass it back to Kate. Get my stuff out of here so it's not confusing. Oh, I did?
So as Jason mentioned, a substantial portion of this year was really devoted to providing ongoing education for the advisory committee to make sure that as we enter into funding opportunities, everybody on the committee is well positioned to pressure test ideas, opportunities, and engage in good faith debate with each other around the best and highest use of these funds. And we approach this by structuring a 6-month learning journey with 2 tracks. The first track being understanding healthcare innovation, and the second track being engaging with clinical and community perspectives in service of better understanding both how the opioid crisis emerged and what its present day impact in our community is. With regard to innovation, it was especially important to understand how different healthcare service providers understand innovation and how innovation opportunities are identified, vetted, and developed. We were lucky to be able to draw on the expertise of our advisory committee and were hosted by both Cleveland Clinic and University Hospitals, Innovations, and Venture Arms to see firsthand how those offices function. We also reached out to engage the Cleveland VA, which maintains both a regional and national innovation arm focused specifically on the needs of veteran patients. Taking time to understand how unique subsets of our community are impacted by this crisis is especially important, as differentiated solutions that begin within one subset of our community may have greater impact and greater value as they're developed and brought out into our larger population. We also met with Lauren Anthus, who's employed by the national healthcare consulting firm Health Management Associates. Some of you may know Lauren from his local work. He was in the past engaged by the Center for Community Solutions as their endowed Medicaid chair. And he is also, like Brandy and some of your other colleagues from the county, a representative on the Region 3 board of the One Ohio Opioid Recovery Foundation. Lauren was able to brief our group on some of the systems level barriers that prevent innovative ideas from making it to market. A good idea, well, great, is on its own not enough. Having an understanding and being able to anticipate policy and regulatory barriers is essential in making sure that a good idea doesn't get stuck on the shelf. In addition to better understanding innovation, it was essential that we take time to get to know the many settings in which residents might come into contact with care. This meant taking time to meet with emergency medicine physicians who are responding to overdoses in our community every day, as well as community-based and street outreach providers who are often engaged in making medication-assisted treatment and harm reduction services more available to those who need them most. We heard directly from Dr. Joan Papp, an emergency medicine physician who leads Metro Health's Office of Opioid Safety. And we also had the opportunity to meet with Christina Jackson, Director of Integrated Harm Reduction at the centers. The centers operates multiple innovative programs designed to meet the needs of people who use opioids, including a mobile syringe exchange, a walk-in medication-assisted treatment clinic, and a network of 4 vending machines stocked with no-cost harm reduction supplies, including naloxone, fentanyl test strips, wound care kits, and sharps disposal containers. Perhaps most significantly, we had the opportunity to hear directly from residents who have been personally impacted by the opioid crisis. Local parents from Lakewood took time to meet with the committee to share the story of their son, who was lost at the age of 19 to an unintentional opioid overdose. These parents have given generously of their time to educate not only our committee, but our community, endeavoring to help us all better understand the lived experience of a family navigating opioid use and overdose death, helping to illuminate where there are gaps in both knowledge and services that might be addressed by investing in innovation. As we close out our first year with a fully seated advisory committee, we're preparing to transition from learning to action. This transition begins with finalizing a funding model that formalizes the fund's priorities and clearly articulates how dollars will be deployed by the fund. For example, will the fund engage exclusively in social impact investing opportunities, or will some dollars be reserved for traditional grant-making activities that may help to develop a pipeline for identifying or testing innovative technologies or processes? We must also identify and formalize an agreement with an intermediary partner. While the foundation plays an important role in managing the fund's financial resources and convening the fund's advisory committee, the fund's complex mission and purpose requires deep and committed expertise in venture funding. As previously discussed, we have been in ongoing conversations with Jumpstart as a potential partner, and those discussions will continue at our last committee meeting of the year tomorrow afternoon. Once the fund has a final funding strategy and a confirmed intermediary partner, we look to make a first round of investments in innovative solutions to identifying the opioid crisis. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear this update. We appreciate your attention and look forward to answering any questions you may have about the fund's activity over the past year.
Thank you. Going to have questions from the committee, and Mr. Miller, if you'd like to have questions too. Ms. Simon?
Sure, thank you. So we allocated $5 million. How has that been spent, and what exactly are you anticipating with regard to the first round of investments?
Excuse me. So the dollars have not yet been distributed. They are invested in, as I mentioned earlier, I'm sorry?
So nothing everything's just an investment right now. Nothing's been spent.
Correct.
Not a dime. Okay, I just wanted to be clear. So secondly, first round of investments, what's the plan for that? Specifics?
Well, the committee will be meeting with Jumpstart and looking about what options would be available for investment through a partnership with Jumpstart.
How did Jumpstart come in to be a partner? Were other organizations vetted? Why do we have Jumpstart at the table?
I know that they were mentioned in the initial discussion with the legislation that was passed to authorize the initial funding. And that's a key partner that provides access to markets and would allow the fund to have the impact that it wishes to have. But we have not interviewed other potential partners at this time.
Kate hasn't.
Yeah, thank you.
If you don't mind my adding, as Jason mentioned, we have not yet entered into a formal partnership with Jumpstart. They're one partner that we're in conversation with, and the expertise recruited for the committee, Neil Wyant in particular, I think will be instrumental in helping us to better understand, is Jumpstart the best partner for the work that this fund hopes to do, in recognition that there are a number of different opportunities available. It's been mentioned that Jumpstart would be a strong partner if the intent was to move forward primarily with medical technology or medical devices. But should the fund have a more diversified funding strategy, Jumpstart may not be the primary partner, may not be the only partner. So we are still in the exploratory discussion stage with them. Ultimately, because this is a donor-advised fund, the authority to disperse dollars does sit with the county. So taking time to go slow in establishing the funding strategy and partnership, it's our hope essentially to go slow now, to go fast later.
Thank you. Thank you through the chair. I just have to say I was surprised to see that in the presentation, if that body has not been officially, recruited or pinpointed as the one who will provide the service. So I was surprised to see that.
Just as both in a bifurcated manner, sitting on as chair of this, but also on the committee, we did have both the University Hospital Innovation going through exactly how they do innovation funding for projects and ideas. And we also had the Cleveland Clinic, both Joseph Rich and Neil Wyant went through how they go about this analysis. And this was just another firm that was looked upon as a way in which you could analyze how do you go for a venture, how do you identify what would be a good candidate, how do you pick our good projects and things of that nature. So both Rich and Wyatt were both Dr. Joseph Rich and Neil Wyatt from both the innovation labs at both Cleveland Clinic, obviously world-renowned, and University, which is already actually analyzing one of the of an opportunity that's been presented. I think I mentioned about the potential of a fentanyl, a vaccine that is looking to actually has conversations. Neil's having, Wyatt was having conversations with them, bringing that as potentially one of the first actual opportunities out there.
Okay, I'm going to defer to my colleagues. My concern about one, the county, I don't believe, looking at diversity when it looks at the Jumpstart, my concern from the beginning, and to see this on a slide without even that officially being the contracting party, I'm concerned about that. So I'm going to turn that over to my colleague.
Sure.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is rare for investments to go directly from a concept stage to investment. So I do get that you needed time to strategically think about how to move forward. What I am concerned about is one of the things, to piggyback on one of the things that my colleague, Councilwoman Simon, talked about, is how we look at who we use to give us guidance for the investments. There are two funds that I'm thinking about that their names are escaping me right now, but Michael Deans runs one of them. and it is strategic in thought and process and led by people of color. The other group is led by a woman. Yes. And so it is important as we look at who gives us guidance that we don't go to the same folks every single time, that we at least interview and have options about new and innovative ways. Because we have an opportunity here to not just invest and earn, but to invest and change. And I want to see this fund be some type of change agent on behalf of Cuyahoga County. And so one of the things is that in your initial, are you capable of having initial conversations? Because I'm not an investment person, I'm just an old housing guy. And so if you haven't finalized your decision-making process, is there now time to do some strategic conversations with other parties that do investments for innovative processes like Jumpstart, some of the smaller funds? They're the ones we all know. Everybody who does anything knows who Jumpstart is, but some of the smaller funds, this might be a great opportunity for them to give us more attention. Thoughts on that?
I mean, the first thought that comes to mind for me is that, this, the presentation was just intended to be a snapshot. So absolutely, and I mean, I think it's safe to say that the Cleveland Foundation stands side by side with you in thinking about wanting to use our dollars to affect change on multiple levels, and including, how and with whom we are investing. So that, to me, is a possibility, and I think that we certainly could consider Jumpstart and others in how to facilitate this process.
Well, and you were asking for other names that are not traditionally thought of in regards to investments and advising. Clearly, the Cleveland Clinic makes Jumpstart look pretty small in relationship to how they look at innovation, how they invest, how they pick target projects, how they go about it. And the university hospital system is probably the largest right now in actually applied applications, with actually test models running right now across the country. They have over 2,000 test models. So
I didn't realize that they were
these are
that
huge.
large.
Yeah, these are probably have, and that's the real value of the Opiate Innovation Fund being here in Northeastern Ohio, is that we are now partnered with probably two of the largest innovative think tanks around medical and innovation right here now that are part of this. I mean, if you had to put a dollar value of what this year represents, I don't think it would be over exaggerating to say that to have these doctors, these folks on there, it would probably be about $300,000 to $400,000 in-kind contribution of their hours that they have spent for these last 12 months to make sure we try and get step one, as you point out, correct as to the thinking process before you start the spending process. The spending process should follow the thinking process, and I think that's what Joseph and Ginger and Kate have done.
I have to say that I do like the fact that the money made money while we weren't moving forward.
Yeah, to put it, having served on the investment advisory committee of the county, we would have made about 1.25% on that money, and here we're making almost 5. So if we were to put what's been suggested today to put the other 5 in, we would actually be making much more money than what we're, and part of it is constraints because of the county's governmental body. But with that flexibility, we can be actually growing this. And imagine what this is. If this is a $50 million, $100 million, now we truly are becoming impactful.
So I want to go to some of the next practical steps.
Sure.
Is this going to work as an arm of an investment portfolio? So, or will we have a staff person assigned to it, or will the Cleveland Clinic have a staff person? I'm sorry, the Cleveland Foundation have a staff person assigned to manage this? Will it stand alone, or it will be some part of someone's portfolio of responsibilities? has that been even discussed during one of the quarterly meetings or monthly
I know that
meetings?
we've discussed it. I'll let Jason talk about it, but I'm sure we're probably not at liberty to actually share the names publicly of.
Oh, well, I'm not asking
of
for
who's being
name, I'm
interviewed,
just
but-
asking for
yeah.
process.
Yes, thank you for the question. So the way that the fund is currently structured, Kate and I are assigned to provide
So it's part
support.
of your portfolio. of work.
Correct. However, there is, it's a lot of work to sort of, I think, go where we hope to go with this fund, and we would like to, and we have had discussions about, retaining the support of consultant, whether that's a full-time or a part-time, permanent or temporary role is, I think part of what we want to understand better is the partner that we ultimately decide on to access the markets that we can invest into. What would the required committee structure need to be to maintain that relationship? And so there is significant expertise in this community, and this, I think, would be an attractive project for somebody to take on. And we do have individuals in mind who we thought could be good partners in that work, but I think the long and short of it is that yes, it would. We are very open to the idea of bringing someone on in a consultant role to guide the committee to be most impactful as possible with this work.
And then does the committee envision the individual, whoever that is, because I don't need to know that at this point in time, are they looking at investments? And then would we have the ability to look at the investments that the investment request would come back to county council?
No, when the county set this up, we set it up so it'd be separate, so
Okay.
that we would not be in the, having to make those decisions.
When would we get the report about what they'd invested in?
What we could provide. There's a quarterly statement that's available for the current status of the fund. And then, when dollars are deployed in different ways, as we receive information from our intermediary partner and share that with the committee, that would include the individuals from the county. And so that information can be shared that way, or we could schedule time to share information.
So we're at the end of a year of a full year's worth of work, in essence. We've had 4 quarters of investment of time and energy from a series of partners and staff and elected officials from the county. What do you envision by mid-year next year? I'm assuming you set up a schedule. I know at the end of every year or the very beginning of every year, I pull my team together and we do a strategic think. What are we going to do? And what have we done? So I'm assuming you did something similar. We all trained similarly. You got to have your to-do list, in other words. What's your to-do list for next year?
So our to-do list begins in part with finalizing the funding model. There are a couple of different pathways forward in terms of how a fund like this can move. One would be to focus 100% on social impact investing opportunities. Those would be long-term, low-interest investments that would be repaid over time and would generate additional income for the fund. That is one pathway forward. It's not the only pathway. There are also opportunities to look at blended funding models. That might look like a split between social impact investing and traditional grant-making opportunities. Unlike a social impact investment, a grant is not typically paid back. We're not earning any return on that in the financial sense, right? The return is primarily social or service-oriented. But finalizing that funding model is really key, in part because that is what will help us to surface the best intermediary partner for the fund. If we were doing purely social impact investing, we may need an intensive partnership with a funding intermediary that has a complex set of human resources able to support the identification of and management of investment opportunities over time, whether those are early stage or late stage investments. If we're looking at more of a blended funding model, I think there are opportunities to really diversify the types of resources that we're accessing and also to lean on the foundation staff a little more, particularly to support that grant-making function. But coming together around that funding model is really key because that unlocks the criteria we need to be looking for in an intermediary partner. And I really appreciate the pressure around surfacing the best possible intermediary and not just looking to the usual suspects. That's something our advisory committee has also pressed us on. We need to know as a group what we want to get out of this, right? Is our hope to hit a bunch of home runs very quickly? Is our hope to be very patient? Get one man on base, advance.
A baseball girl. Okay.
A little bit,
I like you already. That's my thing. I believe in the simplicity of the American baseball game. So the reality here is we got to get to first base first. You can never have a home run if you've never got a player on first, unless you're hitting nothing but home runs. And none of us hit nothing but home runs.
Not in venture capital, no.
So the reality is, how do we get sooner rather than later, because you know that we have useful lives as and lifespans as elected official. So my lifespan is about to be up, and so is so is a couple of other council people at this table. So the reality is, if in our extended lifespan, are we going to be capable of seeing some investment that at least gets this pool of funding to first base? And how do you plan on doing that? Or kind of, sort of, since this is all theoretical at this point.
So beginning with, again, finalizing that funding model, and this is where the input from those with experience in this type of investment has been most useful. It's also where I think our community-based healthcare practitioners have really lit a fire underneath us because they're working in this space every day and have really put some good, healthy pressure on this committee to think about what are those small but impactful investments in innovation where we know perhaps there's some proof of concept, but Ohio has not yet fully availed themselves of the opportunity to engage. This is also where the connections back to the One Ohio Recovery Foundation become significant because we're able to think about how are we able to put this fund's investments in play in ways that complement what is happening with our state level resources and our other county investments. We've received some initial inquiries from organizations, both within the community and across the region. I know Councilman Schron has been independently approached by a few different companies, primarily working in the pharmaceutical space. Again, this is where that intermediary partner becomes so significant. We do not want to task the wrong partner to vet the wrong project. In terms of what action steps we need to take to get money out the door, I think in the first quarter, it is finalizing that funding model, vetting a robust stable of potential intermediary partners, and it may end up looking like more than one partner depending on the funding model so that we are working with the best partner for each potential investment. And then beginning to solicit applications. One of the things that we've debated as a group is coming together around a funding charter. This was suggested by some of our advisory committee members with background in impact investing and venture capital to really clearly scope what are maybe the 2 or 3 lanes that this group wants to drive in. Could they be medical technology or medical devices? Could they be process improvements in community-based behavioral health care? But really clearly identifying those 2 or 3 lanes so that we are able to put out a clear call for what we are looking for, and we are receiving responses that are in greatest alignment with what this group has prioritized as areas of greatest need for Northeast Ohio and Cuyahoga County in particular. But I do believe that funding charter is really an instrumental next step for us.
So does a funding charter become part of the Articles of Incorporation? Or is it a mission, vision, value kind of document?
I'll defer to our general counsel so I don't get that wrong for you.
Oh, yeah, all committees, and we work with all different types of committees, and each one's a little different in how they work. It's not really part of the governing. The council actually approved the governing document. That's where we stop there. But the committee itself can come up with different ways in which they want to operate, how it runs, the focus, et cetera, as long as it's under the governing document. But that does not change. There is an agreement with the Cleveland Foundation.
So the funding charter could change as leadership changes for this group. So for example, if you nominate or have a chair of the committee, the chair could drive change to the funding charter without changing our legislation.
As long as it follows the governing document, which is broad and what it stands for. I can pull it out in front of you right now. We didn't put that excerpt from there, but we follow what was the council approved.
Okay. So the focus I want to get to is what do we produce? And when can we potentially produce it?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, or you hit the ball on the bat, or you drove the
I'm hitting
runner.
it. I've hit it.
the first-
Is it going to land on the field or is it going to be caught? Is it a foul or is it a ball that will get me a batter on play?
Well,
on
as we
base?
all know, if we're baseball aficionados and watch the game, that probably 85% of the balls that are hit never get out to the field. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing that you are foul tipping to stay at the plate because you want to wait for the right pitch to come in to drive that runner. So I think that where we are, and I'm blending between a participant and somebody on this committee, but I think the real value of what we're talking about here today is to make the real commitment that we had talked about making a year plus ago, to have the Cleveland Clinic's head of innovation being part of your conversation that you're alluding to having the head of innovation of UH being part of that conversation. The fact that Jumpstart was discussed, that's almost secondary compared to how Cleveland Clinic went through their document of how they actually choose a pitch they're going to swing at, how UH picks a pitch they're going to swing at, tells us volumes of the stuff that we never had before. I mean, that's part of this last year's worth of learning. We are now to the point where, okay, we are now ready to accelerate this through this process. And I think that clearly that you've got, ironically, you have 9 people here that were on this list. I don't remember, is there 9 in baseball? I think there are.
Yeah, that's ironic.
There are 9 people on the field that are trying to make a difference. And so I think it is clearly that next stage, and it needs our support, I believe, to take it to that next stage also.
So I will,
Yeah,
I
Mr.
can
Burns,
have a bunch of
you had some
questions, so I'll
comments, and then
defer.
We'll go over, yes.
You've done a wonderful job with those questions, too. I appreciate them. Just a little background. Ginger and Kate and Jason, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. Well done, as well as the involvement with the Cleveland Federation. Looks like you put together a wonderful team. Just a little background. I was not on council or involved with this committee when it was initiated, so I'm a little bit behind there. And as Councilwoman Cheryl Stevens said, 3 of the members here won't be here at the end of the year. So I'm going to take a little bit different tact. As you know, the end of the year, budget concerns and budget discussions are what's going on. So my questions probably aren't going to be directed exactly to you, but so that I have a little bit better knowledge, whether from my members here on the committee or maybe Brandy that's here. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this $5 million would not be, it would come from the opioid settlement. It would not come from the general fund.
That's correct. And it is funds that were initially identified by the county executive, Armin Budish, but for the committee said, hey, let's see whether they get this thing stood up. And I believe that they have clearly demonstrated that this body has stood up working organization, that's where the funds would be
None
coming.
of my questions are going to, anything question with what you've accomplished so far, not at all. So that, I appreciate that for understanding that. Two is, do we know what is left in the opioid settlement?
Trevor, no, it's Trevor. I think it's around 60 mil.
Good afternoon, Council, Trevor Meckler, County Council staff. Brandy Carney is also here, so she might have an updated number, but I checked right before the committee meeting, and as of 10/31 from the OBM report, there was actually about $81 million of unexpended dollars in the opioid fund. That does not mean that there might not be some contractual obligations. It's just the current cash balance in the fund. So Brandy could probably give you more of an exact number related to any contracts that might be pending, but that is the balance in the fund as of October 31st.
Okay, thanks,
cash
Trevor.
balance.
I appreciate that. Brandy, do you have any update for us?
Hi, Council. Brandy Carney, Director of Public Safety and Justice. In the fund currently that has not been committed to a current contract, there's approximately $71 million in the fund. There are some additional projects, including some sustainment of current projects like the diversion center that are will be large contracts that will be coming in front of this body very soon. They already have some, I think through the last meeting, and then at the beginning of next year, I have a couple contracts coming forward that'll be pretty large for the fund, but there's still a fair amount of money in the fund. I would just say that myself and the administration, the county administration with the executive and the chief of staff have worked to identify the path for the remaining funds, for the majority of the remaining funds, and we haven't been in front of this committee yet to present that, but we do plan on doing that very soon.
So there's already discussion, debate, or a decision made on how to use the remaining funds?
Through the council, or through the president to the council chair, no, at this time, I would say there's no definitive. I would say that we have a number of projects that are currently contracted that we will have sustainment, and then we also have some new projects to propose. But I would say none of those are for sure. We've been in discussion with the executive about those. I have and he has, but none of them have been confirmed at this point.
Okay,
But I do
thank you.
expect that'll come soon in front of you.
Brandy, as long as you're up there, you've been an active member of the committee. You have had an opportunity to examine and see the caliber of the individuals that are there. You've seen the folks from the Veterans Hospital that have come forward and presented ideas about innovation. The idea of us moving from just a treatment using those dollars to actually creating solutions, do you think that would be in keeping with Judge Polster's vision as far as how these monies would be used?
To the councilman, absolutely. I can tell you, and first, I personally want to thank you so much. This opioid work is become, shouldn't even say become, it's such a passion of mine. I want to make sure all of these dollars go to so many meaningful and impactful projects for so many reasons and for so many people. I would say that, it's great to know that we've made sure through the settlement and through the abatement strategies to invest in harm reduction and recovery and prevention and response. So all those different avenues, but to have this separate group of money for innovation, something new, and the opportunity to potentially be something huge. And the members of this committee, I truly feel like we will get there. I feel like we, as the Cleveland Foundation presented, we intentionally have had, I wouldn't even call it a slow start, because the people and the caliber of people on the committee that you've seen have came to every meeting. And so there's true passion around the table and intention for this fund. We just want to make sure to do it correctly. So I would say, yes, it's a good use of the money. I would say as we move forward and we move into the future, there'll be some really great opportunities to show this group.
My concern based on your comment was that the administration is looking at possible ways of spending all the other money. That is my concern, because I think that this executive will have no trouble spending all the money of any caliber. So is my desire, before that were to take place, would be to actually commit what his prior county council executive, county executive had committed to, which was the $10 million. And it seems to me that this cannot be a bad choice of going forward to create innovation ideas in that respect. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with this fund, and any funding to put towards this fund, I think, is a great opportunity for us. I would also say that any additional money of that $71 million that's going to be proposed or spent has to come to this money, or has to come to this committee first. And so there's still $71 million that has to come forward and have your approval. So at this point in time, there is money in the fund available.
Great. Thank you very much for coming forward.
Mr. Chair, just a couple more comments and then I'll be done. I didn't mean to not acknowledge the leadership from the county too. And Brandy and Paul, and especially you, Jack, has done a phenomenal job with this program. Every time I'm in a committee meeting, Brandy, you're taking on additional responsibilities I was never aware of. So thank you for your effort. The last question I do have through the chair is to the Federation here, is if
I don't mean to correct you, but it's foundation. Sorry about that.
Oh, what?
I'm sure that
What did I say?
Federation.
Oh,
Cleveland Foundation. It's right.
Thank you for that correction. Thank you. Isn't the first time or the last before I'm done, that's for sure. If there's a hesitancy on the part of this committee or the council as a whole for the $5 million to be moved, does it stall or impact where you're at right now in the process?
No, it does not.
Okay. Thank you, Foundation. I appreciate that.
Let's see.
So,
I would like to, oh, go ahead.
excuse me, when is the additional investment needed? Because I have no problem giving it if it's needed, but we're not there, I don't think.
So in terms of need, I think we're in a situation where the balance of the fund contributes to how we are scoping the potential of what we might do. And I don't think there's a right or wrong or hard and fast answer to your question. The fund will work within the limitations of its available spend to identify those opportunities that would be most potentially impactful.
Has anyone suggested an investment to you so far? I heard you say something about a shot that's like
No, a vaccine.
a vaccine. Okay, I think of shots
It was a nasal
and
vaccine.
vaccines.
Sorry
yeah.
about that.
Okay. So what kind of investment would you be looking at for that nasal?
I don't even think the number's been
Vaccine.
presented at this point in time.
Okay.
It's going to be, it would have a great withdrawal of a $5 million fund. It's probably a
So
couple
are we
million dollars.
looking at our first 1 through 3 investments as being $1 million to $5 million? That you could literally do the first investment, the full $5 million? Is that true or valid?
So this is part of what we might scope with a potential funding charter or funding schematic, is to think about, given an available spend of, currently $5 million plus the return that's been generated to date, putting forward a potential funding schema that says we're positioned to make X number investments at X size. If we were looking at, for example, small early stage capital, would we be open to making 2 or 3 investments in the high 5 figures or low 6 figures? Or would we be looking at 1 or 2 really big swings? And I think it depends on the lane that the fund decides it wants to drive in, the maturity of the investment that we're looking at, whether or not we plan to be an only investor or whether we're investing in partnership with others, which may allow our dollars to go further faster. but understanding that each potential investment opportunity is differentiated, and it's really incumbent upon us to put guardrails around where, when, how, and how much.
And
So
if I
what
might
do
just
you-
comment that you are somebody who's been involved with investing, and you know that the snowball has to roll down the hill and get bigger before you necessarily want to start spending your investment dollars, because it will then grow at a more effective rate of growth. So then it does open up opportunities. If you spend down the first initial, which was supposed to have been initially $10 million, we would not be probably having these conversations. But the risk is, if you spend $5 million to zero, you don't look like you're not a serious fund. So the reverse is to grow it a little before you start spending it down. And then 1 year is, you've been around investment portfolios before. Very rarely do they invest in the first 2 or 3 years. They grow and start to earn money.
No, but I had hoped that we'd be to the point where they'd tell me that they now have I guess it's called a funding charter. And so they had a concept that they could articulate. They were looking to do these social investments, or these medical device investments, or these technology-based investments, so that we would be able to take a look at the history of whatever small fund they used, because this is comparable to the syndication stuff that I'm involved in on a regular basis. And we're looking at attracting more and more funds to the syndication. And it only happens when you get to the point where you can speak out. And I'm hoping to get to that sales point sooner rather than later. So that's the reason for asking if they could do it in the first 6 months. So if that's the case, then yes, they need our money right away. But if they don't, then is the next question, we don't want to see our money, we don't want to see the county's money, it's not ours personally. We don't want to see the county's fund not have that 5 million set aside. So do we set it aside inside the pool? And then when they are ready, they come back and get it?
Mr. Chair,
Sure, Mr. Simon?
that was actually what I was thinking, that I don't think we're ready to, I'm not, as a council person overseeing this fund, ready to turn over another 5 million without an investment model being finalized and without any specifics in front of us. So especially with the partner that the fund, because we lose control of the money essentially once it turns over to the third nonprofit, basically. We lose control, and I'm certainly not comfortable at this stage turning over another 5 million. And the other question I have is, I keep hearing about the Cleveland Clinic and University Hospital. What about our hospital, Metro Hospital, about leaning into them and what they're doing in terms of innovation funds or their vision?
They've too have been at the table. It's just how many medical facilities were you allowed to have in the initial group of 9? They have been, as we've talked about, having a set of subcommittees that would be a place where you could bring in Veterans Hospital. With the Veterans Hospital is clearly the biggest innovation hospital in the world out there. People don't realize how big it is. Not ours, but when you combine them all together, they have more innovation labs, as we found out.
The clinic?
No, the VA.
Well, I know, but I'm talking about Metro. All I heard really was about the clinic and how, we're following their model with Jumpstart, and, that's all I heard was a clinic in UH, not anything about Metro.
It was just a question of how many you actually have on the committee of the 9.
No, when you were justifying Jumpstart being the named candidate in the presentation, you talked about the Cleveland, that we're following what the Cleveland Clinic's doing. That was a justification for Jumpstart being in the slide presentation. And all I'm saying is, why the clinic and not Metro or the VA or, Cleveland Clinic's, not our county hospital.
So, let somebody else speak in.
Yeah, Neil.
Could I say something?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, whoever I interrupted, I apologize. I just want to, underscore, we did have Dr. Pat come, and speak with us. And then the way that the fund agreement, is written and signed, there are, we have in here accommodation for 3 individuals with expertise in evaluating and funding commercialization of innovations, with at least 2 of the 3 individuals with specific expertise in healthcare and medical innovations appointed by the foundation. So the potential is there should an individual step off of the committee, roll off of the committee, no longer be choose to participate on the committee. That would open up an opportunity, and somebody from Metro would absolutely be.
Mr. Chair, are there terms of service?
At this point in time, I don't believe we've given, did we give terms of service, years of service on any of those slots? 2 years,
No.
3 years? I don't think we did.
No, there are none,
It's-
correct.
And that way we
startup.
don't have a way to roll. If we had 3-year appointments, then we would know that if we had Cleveland Clinic, Metro, and UH this time, and stagger their terms, so somebody would get to serve a little bit longer than somebody else. But the reality is that then we could send folks to y'all that would say that from a smaller facility, for example, does SUMA have anything in this county?
I don't think so.
Looking at partners that are hospital-like entities or hospital-like innovators, a way to have them roll on and roll off. Not that they have to stay off forever, but I want to be inclusive as much as possible.
The committee can definitely add terms to this. Again, there was a lot of latitude given. We're up and running. We have year 1 and did all this great work. And it was something that has been suggested. So we will take it back. Remember, you do have appointments to this committee, which is the voice of this entire council. I just want to tell you that's the reason why you kept on the appointment, so that you could get the report back, be part of it, and continue to help shape this great work for our county.
Yeah, and every hospital in county, VA and Metro, were part of bringing forth information as far as what they're doing and their background. It was 2 names went on the list, and there's no reason that you couldn't have term limits out there, and no reason you couldn't stagger them either. Mr. Miller?
So I'd like to thank you, Jason, Katie, and Ginger for coming and for this presentation, and to say that I strongly support the fund. I understand we've made some progress this year, both locally and nationally, on the opiate overdose rates, but it's still just distressingly way too high, and we're not getting where we want to be despite a lot of effort, and so we need new solutions, and we need innovation. And I have a couple of questions. The first is, want to ask about something that Councilman Schron has talked about favorably with respect to the Community Development Fund, and I want to see if it applies here. And that's the idea of having a competitive process where there's application rounds, and we bring a number of alternatives together at the same time and set up a scoring process to identify the highest quality proposals. Are you planning on doing something like that?
That's a process that the advisory committee has raised up as something that would be meaningful and useful to them in terms of vetting potential investments, to perhaps have an intermediary partner manage a pipeline, and then have the advisory committee be able to independently and collectively score and review those projects together. So yes, we have explored the potential of a competitive process that would leverage individual feedback from advisory committee members.
Thank you. You spoke earlier about, with regard to the intermediaries, wanting to take a broad look at this and not just choose the usual suspects. If you did choose the usual suspects, who would those be? I want to get a sense of the kind of organizations or people you're talking about.
So locally, Jumpstart is one usual suspect. We're also lucky within the foundation to have an in-house investments team that works with venture firms across Ohio and the region. We would partner with our investment team to surface some additional key members of the investing ecosystem and venture ecosystem here in Ohio. We don't have a short list. I think part of that comes back to, again, the committee coming together around particular funding strategies. So after surfacing funding strategies, being able to then pursue firms that are best positioned to do impactful work within that specific realm, that has the active pipeline, that has the in-house expertise to appropriately pressure test investments, and that hopefully has a diverse network of partners that may or may not be known to us.
Do you have an aspiration as to when the initial investments might be issued, and how much of the current $5 million you think could be put to use sometime in 2025?
Councilman, there's definitely a strong desire on the part of the advisory committee to take action in this way in 2025. Part of the, I think the allocation of the available assets in the fund will depend upon the charter that we come up with and what that sort of theory of investment might look like for us, and what proportion of those dollars would be available per the committee's approval for investment through an intermediary, versus traditional grant making, versus dollars being left in the fund to support unidentified need that may come up, whether it may be a consultant or otherwise, to pursue the interests of the fund.
Have you made any initial decision or sense of direction in terms of how much risk you're willing to take? I mean, as I understand it, for example, the vaccine project, if successful, it would be a grand slam home run, but I understand it's a pretty risky proposition as to whether it's going to work or not. So my question is what's your sense of what level of a risk you're willing to take?
Excuse me, not to keep pointing back to it, but I think that would be something that we would uncover the committee's tolerance for risk versus the impact that we wish to have with those dollars, and at the committee level, and that would be part of those investing guidelines and charter that we develop. But we certainly we want to balance, the desire to have impact, the desire to take action with, not wanting to make a poorly decided investment early on and expend, that portion of the funds. Though my background is not investing, and so there's a certain deference that I make to the folks on the committee, like Councilman Schron, who have more experience in that space, and I've certainly learned a lot. But that is an issue that would need to be, I think, formally addressed in that document. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to close by saying that I look forward with excitement to see what you come up with in 2025, and I'll be watching closely. Best of luck to you. Thank you.
And Mr. Miller, to your point, you raised the question of whether or not a fentanyl vaccine could be developed, but I don't know whether it would end up here, but for this Investment Advisory Committee for fentanyl and opiates, that conversation would not be taking place in Cleveland, Ohio, but for Neil being on this committee, Neil opening up his doors, potentially, don't know whether it'll happen, that the 2,000 lives to be tested would be tested right here in Cleveland, Ohio. I can assure you that the $5 million that we have in the fund would not be enough to run that pilot. But if the UH were to be part of that and be part of that solution, with the fact that this committee was stood up by this council, put us in a position to make those introductions, to welcome a potential game-changing, as you said, grand slam home run potentially be here in Cleveland, I think that this council could look with pride. Even if it was only a single that went into this area, it would be a base hit that no one else is doing, and it would change, I believe, the lives of individuals from here all across this country. And so please don't always measure things by the pure dollars that you put in the bucket. Measure it by the relationships that have been developed, those 9 individuals who have sat there for almost 12 months together to blend, to hear lives that were lost, to change philosophies, and it will only grow, as my colleagues who have been involved with investing know, by putting another dollar into the pot, which will then grow the next dollar, which then grows the next dollar, and that's how it grows. It doesn't grow. There was a book I read about talons, and the one talon person who put it in the ground and the others who invested were the ones that saw the reward. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I can, excuse me, I can answer that. So, right, the fund the Cleveland Foundation does calculate a spendable balance in any given year. The fund is not limited to that spendable balance, but it's a recommendation that is based on taking a 5% average of the previous 12 quarters as of the previous June 30th, and a certain dollar amount is made available. And those dollars would be available through that amount that could be utilized to incur any costs that the committee agrees to take on.
So right now, they'd have a limited amount of money to be able to spend because we've earned $450. Is that somewhere in this document? So we'd take 5% of that $450 that we could spend?
It's not limited to any percentage.
Okay.
So there's not any percentage. And yes, any outside costs would be paid from these dollars. So if there is an outside person and there's fees, they would be paid from these dollars. Just let you know. There is a fee to the Cleveland Foundation. It's 20 basis points or 0.2%. how it's currently invested. That's all inclusive, all of the time of all the staff at the Cleveland Foundation. So if we bring in, your question was, if we brought in our investment team as part of that, it's all inclusive. You get all,
okay.
you get all three of us,
I
you
thought
get
we-
100 people at the Cleveland Foundation when you pay that as our partner,
And
as our community
It
partner.
would still only be 20 basis points.
That's, it
'Cause that
is.
was
So you
my-
could call us every day if you would like, and we'd answer the questions, so.
It's a good deal, folks. It is,
I wouldn't want to call you every day. But the fact that I needed to understand how much it costs to do business. Because we do want to make sure that we publicly are transparent with how much we're willing to pay for the management of these funds. So, yeah, I guess you are one of the best games in town then,
Yeah,
at 20
it's-
basis points.
yeah, it's a really good deal for the taxpayers. And it's a good deal that we've made more money than what we are allowed to make in our county investments. And it just seems that in order for us to grow to the next level, and it will mean use of our local hospital. It will mean use of our VA hospitals. It will mean use, they just wouldn't be one of those 9 chairs, at least at this moment, but they could be sitting in that chair at some time in the future.
One of the other things that they mentioned was investing with other partners, for example, one of the state's funds. And then NIH, I know, does partner investments. Are those parties you're looking at?
So at this stage, I think the committee is open to a diversified set of potential funding partners. I know we've brought up the expertise on the advisory committee ad nauseum this afternoon, but as we think about how we might share risk and how we might be able to go in on those investments that maybe do have a greater risk potential, doing that in partnership helps to reduce risk to this particular fund. I think our dollars can go further in partnership than they can go alone. In the past, we have, on the grant-making side of our house, partnered with the National Institutes of Health and National Science Foundation to identify opportunities for investments in medical research, in part because they have a great pipeline and they have fabulous in-house expertise that we don't have within the Cleveland Foundation year-round. Other opportunities would involve, again, partnering with investment firms that are known to us through our in-house investing team, or working with our advisory committee to surface potential investments that are maybe not a best fit for their shops, but that might be perfect for a project like this. So I think we're open to partnership. We know we can't do this alone.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's my belief on this, that if we demonstrate that we make the full commitment that we talked about when it was first brought forward, that this will then mean that other people, like the state, like individuals that I believe who, of those sad lives of over 100,000 lives per year have lost, that we become a beacon for this fund to say, we stepped in once, here we're now making the full commitment. Now the state of Ohio, now other people will say, yes, we want to be part of this, because we want to be part of the opiate solution, not just part of the opiate treatment. And so I truly believe that and not to overwork your baseball analogy, but by driving that person, we've got them to first base with what we've done this year. I believe that this would demonstrate, to put this full commitment that we had talked about when we put this in place originally, and when the county executive put it in place and had that allocated in the funds, those full $10 million, that this would be a statement to the world that yes, this will be a place to bring your opiate solutions, because we want to be part of it, not only for fundraising, but I know that I've talked with Jason and Kate without being at liberty to talk about individuals, but the individuals that are being discussed are truly rock stars in Northeastern Ohio.
To act as consultants or intermediaries
Yes.
to manage the fund, okay.
There is not a soul on this committee that would, if these individuals one of, or two or three of these individuals, any of these ones would come forward and actually finalize, that you wouldn't say, truly, we have now made that next step also. And so I'm asking for this. And the reason I believe what the timing is, why it's important today, because you heard the potential that we know that there's a risk that if the funds are there, that they might not be there at some time in the future if they are not
So, Mr.
set aside
Chairman,
moved. Yes,
I
ma'am.
am, as you know, I'm hesitant to invest, which is why they only had 5 million in the first place. I get why we want to move the next 5 forward, but I don't know that they're ready for disbursement because they're not ready. They don't have an intermediary staff giving advice on what steps or actions to take.
Let's see, Mr. Mackler, if we were to amend this and pass it in such a way that says that these funds would be set aside within the Opiate Innovation Fund that we've committed, that but for any other reason other than that they do not achieve that goal that was just suggested about setting up an intermediary identification, an individual being hired, and a program, could we have those funds set aside in the form of amending this legislation to cover Ms. Stevens and Ms. Simon's concerns?
Good afternoon, Council. Trevor Mackler, County Council staff again. Yes, I'd want to work with the Law Department on language that would require a proposed substitute for the legislation. Under the legislation right now, we do have the Department of Development overseeing that agreement, and so it would be adding a new section that would put those safeguards around there. The funds would not be released until then at the Department of Development's discretion until those things
three
happen.
things were achieved.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So that'd be something that I want to work with law
with a
on.
twofold question. One is that the constraints would be there, that they wouldn't be released until we have the staff and we have the individual and those policies that are being alluded to. But the flip side is that those funds would not be used by the county executive for any other purpose other than for this, but for the failure to achieve those goals.
Mr. Chair, that wouldn't be able to happen without council's approval, so.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, what I was thinking, first of all, thank you to all of you here. I didn't say that at the beginning. But to put this money, earmark the money, or just put the money aside that as council, we won't, I don't know if we can't say it's going to go here because we have a new council coming in, but we can also maybe somehow reserve 5 million in a different place. I don't know.
Why can't we keep it in the
We
leave it in
can.
the opioid fund, but reserve 5 million based on, and funds to be released upon the hiring of staff, the creation of a funding charter. I think that was the phrase you guys used that you're about to finish. You've initiated conversation among the members, but you have no final agreement on the funding charter.
Well, I would want to see progress and ideas about, I'm not ready to commit another 5. I mean, we had 10 million
And the third thing
initially.
was going to be the initial investment ideas.
I think we, as a new council, we'll have to say whether we want money going into that. I understand we don't want it spent by the executive. That's what I'm hearing, the 5. But I'm not sure that I'm willing just to say, take another 5 here yet. I think it's premature. So I don't know what to do about that.
We have to give some legislation. We have to give some language for legislation.
Yes, we do.
And so the language that I'm coming up with is that there are 3 elements that we just discussed for potential release of funds: hiring of staff, funding, creation of a funding charter, and initial investment ideas.
What if these ideas are not amenable to the council? I don't necessarily, we lose control of where this money goes, and it's a trust, and we've trusted 5 million. I'm not sure that I
Well-
would want another 5 going.
The
at
only,
this-
the only comment I would have on that, Ms. Simon, is that this body had already agreed that we would not be reviewing the actual ideas because we did not want to be in the fiduciary responsibility of having to make the decision that we like company A versus company B. And so that's why we handed that off to a third party.
No, I know, but we approve ultimately, I would like more control. I'm not sure I want money going to a pharmaceutical company. And I had enough faith to allow 5 million, and I'm not sure that I agree to have it going to this fund.
Well, I mean,
I don't know who the intermediary is going to be. It's always Jumpstart, they're always there at the table.
Well,
Maybe that's the only gig in town, I don't know, but I don't know yet. Just because you name an intermediary in this proposal doesn't mean that it's something that I'm going to agree is the best fit.
See, I thought we were losing control purposefully because we are not a body of experts, but we have ideas about how we want the future.
We did
to
lose
look.
control of 5, and I'm saying I don't want to lose control of another 5.
Well, we don't until they've actually done a little more work.
I think this is premature today. I expected to hear more about concrete ideas, and no offense, you didn't know probably you were going to be called in virtually our last council meeting with this presentation. But I think this is all premature to say now what we did is we reduced the 10 to 5 to show progress and firm ideas. And today we didn't get any of that. We
I
learned
think that's
about,
being disingenuous.
we learned about 12 months of putting together the basis of this, but nothing really concrete going forward.
I think that's
Okay.
not, when you have commitments from the top innovation labs committing their time and their effort and their money and bringing their labs and showing how they develop and how they analyze ideas and investments I think is not being fair to the individuals that have shared their time and energy to share. This is how they go forth for medical innovation ideas. I mean, to receive that kind of consulting services, you'd be paying huge amounts of money, and we got it at no cost to the taxpayers.
At 5 million, they have 5 million. That's nothing to shake a stick at of taxpayer dollars. I don't understand why this is a starting spot and we can put aside or hold back 5, and if this council that's coming in decides that it's worthwhile to invest 5 more, we can do that. But right now, I think it's premature, and even with these 3 contingencies, I'm not comfortable without looking at what comes back.
It appears to me that Ms. Stevens' contingencies provides the guardrails that
Okay.
she was looking for, and provides guidance, and it just seems to me that it gives the best of all worlds. It identifies funding for support for going forward if those contingencies, those guardrails are met.
If they're met.
From that standpoint.
Mr. Chair, if I could comment, with the concerns of Councilwoman Simon, first and foremost, I support this wholeheartedly. There's no doubt in my mind that there's a need for it, and I'm sure everyone has been impacted by addiction somewhere, sometime in their lives. My concern is what Councilwoman Simon refers to as a new council coming in, but not only a new council, there's going to be 3 new members of this committee coming in. I know how difficult it's been in the last year that I came on to try to get caught up to speed with what's going on. It's next to impossible. You're going to have at least 3 new members to this committee trying to bring them up to speed. My understanding is council's got the ability to yay or nay the budget anyways. Why do those guardrails need to be put in there? If this committee feels strongly, we can pass our comments on to the next committee and so forth. But if council has the ultimate decision on the budget, why do we need to put the guardrails in at this time?
And please remember, this is not a budget item. This is coming out of a separate opiate innovation. This is not mixed in the general fund at all.
I understand that, and we discussed that sooner, but the way that you're talking about it, or that we've talked about, is that you wanted to put $5 million aside into that fund. I don't know, I haven't had the opportunity to speak to the administration, what other programs they are contemplating, and I think that, this is a bit of a crossroads for the county. There's 3 totally new members coming on. And we've already made some commitments with the 0.25% that they didn't have any input on or vote on. So I'm just hesitant to, and by no means, I don't want anyone to think that I am not a proponent of this program. I am. I just don't know if now is the time to commit $5 million. That's all I'm concerned about.
Mr. Chair, if I could add to that, this, to some degree, this legislation is also a fiscal item as well, only because in the legislation itself, if approved, council is authorizing the appropriation of the dollars with this. And any future appropriations or transfer of funds or expenditure of funds, anything north of $500,000 would have to come back to this body. So that money, if this is not approved at a council today or at the council meeting tomorrow, this money would continue to sit in the county's opioid fund that was created by ordinance from this body.
So, point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. The original enabling legislation in 2022 set aside not only the $5 million, but reserved the other $5 million?
No.
I just remember.
Yeah, so what was
We talked about 10
Correct.
and then we reduced it to 5.
What was originally introduced was the concept of giving this innovation fund $10 million. Council, after deliberation, reduced that from $10 million to $5 million. And that was the amount that was ultimately approved by this body and then transferred into the innovation fund under the Cleveland Foundation.
Okay.
And so that remaining $5 million, along with the other, what is that, $76 million, is still sitting, as we referenced, the cash balance of approximately $81 million that's sitting in that fund today at the county.
And each increment over $500,000 has to come before the council body before it can be expended.
Correct. And if
So they
it's,
couldn't spend down without council approving it all. And would the request for the additional $5 million show up in any discussion on the expenditures for the other 71?
yes, so if it's a contract that has not been approved, if it's below $500,000, it could appear on the Board of Control agenda, which obviously council members sit on. Anything above that would have to come to council. But even prior to that, regardless of the dollar amount, any appropriation, even if it's a penny, would have to come to this body on a biweekly fiscal agenda to be able to pay out those dollars. So any appropriation level would at least have to come to this body for consideration.
My concern, and I will not be on this body, is if you look at what Mr. Miller's comments were that we all received, that this county council, this county executive is allocating or identifying funding far in excess of these budgets. And Mr. Miller clearly has identified all these activities that are taking place outside. And now you still have to approve them, you new body, as you go forward. But he's given a warning sign that the scope of which a lot of these activities are being stretched are things that we're going to have to, you're going to have to make decisions on in the future. And good luck in that respect. It was my desire before he does the same thing, potentially with the remaining portion of the Opioid Innovation Fund, that we do not that we carve it out and set it aside for a valid purpose. Now, in the event that we get to some point and this body, what are the, we have counsel for the Cleveland Foundation. In the event that for some reason that this body should say, hey, they want to close out the fund itself, what are the rights to close it up? Is there a way that can be redeemed back in should somebody else, some other new elected body that comes in and replaces this body here and wishes to do a clawback? Is there a way to do that?
No.
Okay, so those funds are there for investing purposes.
So it appears that I don't have
I would second your motion.
But then we wouldn't be able to pass it
Because we don't have the
two
third,
against and two
we don't
for.
have the third person here to vote. The only thing we could do is ask that whether the council president would appoint Mr. Miller and see whether or not he would be supportive in regards to it. Just to get it to the full body
Tomorrow.
for tomorrow.
Well, this is so last minute. I'm not comfortable with this and now appointing people to a committee at 5 PM on $5 million of taxpayer money into a fund that we don't have enough information about. I don't think that's prudent. I wish there was a way to put aside 5 million that potentially could go into this fund. But I'm not hearing that there's a way other than council holding it back, the new council. And I'd be one to say, let's hold back 5 million and not, move forward with using it all on these other projects that I don't know enough about either. I think we probably need to know what the vision is of where this money might go, but as a holistic way to analyze it, I'm not comfortable. I wish there was more information in front of us, but there's not.
Yeah, we do know that 165 million came to the county. Or how much was it?
To the councilman, it was 121 million, and we're at 130 million total now that we have in that initially, it was an initial allocation of 121 million when we settled at the end of 2019. After that, we did receive an additional, I think it was $2 million in checks, and then we have investments that's came since then.
Why can't council allow for a different fund to be set up as a council contingency fund? Why can't we do that?
Why are we setting up a contingency fund?
Because if it's part of the opiate fund,
Oh, you want to reserve?
I want to
to
reserve 5 million
for the
out of the fund for potentially going to this when they come back with more information.
Well, I thought that's what I was suggesting.
No, you're
was
saying that it would
condition-
automatically go if these 3 conditions are met, and I'm not comfortable with if come on these conditions, because I might not even agree to the conditions at the time when they come back with concrete information. What is their investment model?
What if that
Who's the
were-
intermediary?
What if those 3 conditions were the reviewing point to then release the funds opposed to automatic releasing? Would that satisfy?
To come back to council
With those three-
committee
when those
to
three
review
commissions
it?
are- Those 3 conditions, they would come back automatically to the Economic Development Committee to be reviewed whether to release.
Well,
Is that said, I mean, that
That would trigger the review by Economic Development.
triggers the
Committee.
review.
well, it would trigger a review.
Right. It
That's
doesn't-
all.
Doesn't trigger an automatic, it does trigger an automatic review, as opposed to having to wait for the council county executive to take some action.
Yeah, I don't want legislation that says if these conditions are met, finalizing an investment model, finding an intermediary would automatically allow that money to flow. That's my objection. But if it's simply coming back, and yes, it would trigger a review. I'm not sure we can do that, but 5 million would sit
Why
someplace.
couldn't-
Trevor, do you think there's any problem with being able to put those 3 conditions in, which then would trigger an
Well,
automatic
is that a
review?
Trevor question, or is that a law department question?
Yeah, this is a lot at 5 o'clock on a Monday before a council meeting that we have to look at the legalities of doing something along these lines. This is my concern.
Good afternoon again, Trevor Mackler, County Council staff. That's something that I would want to work with the law department on. I think, yes, we could require that if those 3 conditions are met, it would have to come back to the council for final release of those dollars, similar to how usually we give the department director that authority when we do certain awards, but this is something that would take some time to work with the law department, just to make sure we have the right, the appropriate language in the legislation.
As well, and I want to make sure those 3 conditions are sufficient to satisfy the review, but
If I could add, Brandy Carney, Director of Public Safety and Justice for the county, I just share some concerns being a committee member about those 3 conditions being able to be met. Again, we're in some stages. It's early in stages as we're working through this and figuring it out. So my concern is whether or not those are the exact next steps that would come out of this committee.
Okay, can you elaborate? Is that what I'm saying, that maybe these aren't the 3 conditions that make sense at this point?
I
Is
think
what
that-
I was saying.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about just triggering a review mid-year and come back and present? And the committee can look at the 5 million at that point. It will come back, and at that point, you will be further along, and I think that the committee can take a look at it. So an automatic review, somehow put aside the 5 in that legislation, and it will come back and protect the concern that it's going to be eaten up with these other projects, and also satisfy the committee, I being one, hopefully, that we'll be able to take a look at it at that time. I think that solves the concerns of everybody, I think.
Are you suggesting that you would like to amend this legislation to make it satisfactory to you, or you?
I just put an idea out there that potentially we could install or amend the legislation to put a provision in there that there will be an automatic review mid-year 2025 to see whether the 5 million should be allocated as additional capital into this fund.
Okay. Trevor, how hard would that be for you to accept that amendment?
Mr. Chair, I would want to run the proposed language past our council as well as the law department, which we can do tomorrow morning.
Okay. Can we vote it out with a proviso that you would have it reviewed for tomorrow?
Yeah, we could get something out to the body probably
so-
by early afternoon.
Okay. I will second Ms. Simon's.
Okay, so first I need to withdraw my motion.
You never got a second, did I? Oh, yes, I
Yeah,
did second it.
I
Yes.
made a motion
And I
and
will
you
withdraw my
seconded.
second, okay?
So
Ms.
I
Simon?
withdraw mine.
I will second your motion, and you're going to put the language in place, and it will come before committee, council for, might as well do second reading approval, then if the language is approval. There,
Oh, wait, I made the
you
motion.
moved, I'll second it. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we didn't get you money today, but in 6 months, another body will review it and get you, hopefully, your next round of funding. Thank you. And thank you for all your time and effort. Thank you. Is there anything else, any other matters before the committee?
Thank you,
This
Jack.
will be my
No,
last
just
official
to
time.
say thank you.
To slap this gavel. Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Okay.